I unearthed terrifying tales of cursed opium addicts in haunted old Shanghai. I never should have opened that door the moment I did. A chill swept through me. The air turned heavy, thick like smoke from the opium dens of old Shanghai. It enveloped me, wrapping around my throat and squeezing. I was only looking for a dusty book in a forgotten library, but now I stood at the threshold of nightmares. In my routine life, I was just another curious historian, piecing together tales of the past. My mornings were filled with dusty pages and the faint smell of old leather. But then, I stumbled into this place. Shadows flickered under the dim, flickering light. It felt like the darkness was alive, whispering secrets I didn't want to hear. The room was cold, almost freezing, with walls that seemed to lean in, as if to swallow me up whole. I could hear my heart pounding. Whispers floated around me, echoing stories of cursed opium addicts. Their restless souls lingered in the air, haunting the space. I felt eyes upon me, unseen watchers lurking just beyond the shadows. I shivered as I stepped further inside, the floorboards creaking beneath my feet like the moans of lost souls. A sudden noisy scuttling sound behind one of the shelves made me jump. I was alone, or so I thought. Sweat broke out on my brow as I scanned the room, my breath shallow and quick. Then I saw a flicker of movement. A shadow darted across my periphery, something pale and fast. I wanted to run, wanted to escape that suffocating place, but curiosity had me rooted to the spot. My mind raced with thoughts of the cursed tales I had read. What if the stories were true? Another noise, a whisper this time, calling my name, echoing off the walls. My heart stopped. Was it my imagination? Was I losing my grip on reality? I took a cautious step back, the air thickened, prickling my skin with dread. Something unseen loomed in the darkness, lurking just beyond my sight. Then, a loud crash shattered the stillness. My heart raced as I turned. The door I had entered through slammed shut, sealing me in. Panic clawed at my chest. I was trapped. All of a sudden, the whispers turned shrill, echoing in a cacophony of terror. I backed up, my hands trembling, my mind screaming for escape. And then I saw a figure emerging from the shadows, its face lost to the darkness, but its presence unmistakably ominous. It hovered there, just out of reach, a reminder of the horrors this place had seen. My breath hitched. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure stepped forward with a fluid grace that belied its grotesque form, a sickly pallor spilling from the darkness like spilled ink. My mind raced to identify it, grasping for words I could not speak. The whispers crescendoed, overpowering my thoughts, a discordant symphony of sorrow that threatened to drive me to madness. "Help us," they cried, a haunting refrain that I wanted to scream, to shatter the oppressive atmosphere surrounding me, but the sound clawed up my throat, lodged painfully, like a warning that refused to leave my lips. The figure loomed closer, the edges of its body distorted, flickering as if caught between realms. Stale air filled my lungs, heavy with the scent of decay and despair, the very essence of those tormented souls lingering within this unhallowed space. That I tore my gaze away, forcing myself to look around for any means of escape. There, beneath a layer of dust, stood a small table cluttered with tattered books and strange artifacts. One object glimmered faintly, a brass locket with intricate carvings. My heart ached with a mix of fear and desperate curiosity. I felt an inexplicable urge to approach it, as if it held the key to the mysteries that plagued this place. But as I reached for the locket, the temperature plummeted. The dust danced with an unseen breeze as the shadow drew nearer. "Leave," it rasped, its voice a raspy whisper that scratched at my sanity. "You are not meant to be here." I froze, paralyzed, every instinct urging me to turn and flee. Yet the hand that was supposed to clasp the locket now trembled, feeling the soft brush of a lingering curse. With a shimmer, the locket opened, revealing a faded portrait of a woman. Her eyes, impossibly hollow, watched me through time. I stumbled back, clutching my chest as a flood of memories washed over my images of opium dens, swirling smoke, and cries of despair. The haunting echoes of addiction and loss clawed at my consciousness, merging with my reality. I was no longer just a historian. I was part of the tale. Find her, the figure hissed, inching closer still, its features beginning to sharpen, revealing gaunt, hollow cheeks and mouths that twisted into a silken snarl. Find her, or pay the price. Suddenly, the bookshelf behind me trembled, and I felt an overwhelming shift of energy crash around me like a tidal wave. Books toppled to the floor, and in that chaos, a blood-curdling scream erupted from the abyss. It was followed by a cacophony of wailing, the voices of the damned swirling around like an unholy storm. I could feel the desperate need to flee, but it was as if the very air conspired against me, pressing down my shoulders, chaining my limbs. The whispers grew sharper, more frantic, calling forth names I couldn't understand, urging me to stay, to make a choice. I felt the chill seep deeper, burrowing into my skin, filling me with dread and determination. I spun around. The door remained sealed, bolted against my frail hope of escape. The shadows stretched menacingly, licking the walls like flames. I knew I was running out of time. I could either succumb to the darkness and join the tortured souls, or I could hunt for answers amongst the cursed artifacts. Then, unexpectedly, it spoke again, its voice low and reverberating like a death knell. You have until dawn. What will you choose? Before I could manage a thought, the ground beneath me shuddered, splitting open in a jagged darkness, revealing the empty void below. My heart raced, caught between the pull of the shadow and the uncertain path to freedom. As the void beckoned, I felt a cold hand brush my ankle, and suddenly, it was too late to choose. An overwhelming force tugged at me, dragging me toward the abyss. Then everything went black. I awoke in a different place, the air thick and suffocating, swirling with a miasma of history and regret. A thin sliver of moonlight broke through the jagged cracks of the crumbling walls, faintly illuminating my surroundings. Lurching to my feet, I felt a new weight settle in my chest as I took in the sight. I stood in what appeared to be a dilapidated opium den, the remnants of the past still clinging to the fabric of the air. Littered across the rotting floor were half-burned lanterns and broken pipes, their once vibrant colors now dulled like long-forgotten dreams. A gilded mirror hung crooked on the wall, reflecting not just my timid figure but a distorted landscape of half-visions, nebulous shapes darting in and out of sight, faces twisted in pain unfurling before me like forgotten memories. Beside me, a large opium bed draped in yellowing silk beckoned with grotesque allure. It whispered promises of escape and oblivion. But the air was thick with a darkness that was no longer just a memory. It was present, palpable, and hungry. "Help us!" came a unified plea, echoing soft yet taunting as I moved further inside. The voices seemed to rise from the very floorboards, layering their sadness in an opus only the damned could compose. Each step I took, dread seeped deeper, that feeling of being watched crawling up my spine like a serpent. A strange compulsion gripped me to explore the artifacts scattered around. Flickering shadows distorted my vision. I heard the uneasy rustle of unseen figures flitting just out of sight. I had to find her, the woman from the locket. What sacrifice lay ahead remained unclear, but with each passing moment, the distressing dread only grew more pronounced. Suddenly, a groan split the silence, emanating from beyond the thin wooden partition that separated this forlorn room from the rest of the den. My heart thundered in tandem with the rapid beat of my thoughts. Was someone else here? Or was it merely the echoes of the lost, driven by a mix of dread and morbid curiosity? I pressed my ear against the partition, straining to listen. Soft sobs flowed like a river, each one heavy with sorrow, followed by chilling whispers, secrets exchanged in the dark. "They won't let you escape," a voice warned, nodded with despair. With tentative resolve, I pushed open the creaking door, revealing a narrow corridor lined with shattered artifacts. The walls seemed to moan in agony as I stepped through, shadows swirling like black smoke. At the end of the corridor, I saw the faint light of an oil lantern. Drawn inexplicably to it, I inched closer, wading through the gloom. When I reached the lantern, my breath caught in my throat, and the flickering flames revealed a silhouette figure standing hunched in the corner, face obscured. "Help us," it croaked, sounding more like a death rattle than a request. Every instinct screamed for me to flee, but I remained rooted to the spot, the air thickening unbearably, coiling around me like a suffocating vine. Suddenly, the figure turned its head, and the dim glow illuminated a face lined with age, remorse, and an all-consuming emptiness. It was her, the woman from the locket, yet she was not whole. Where her features should have held beauty now lay a mask of decay, earth-gray marred with scars, her eyes blackened voids that seemed to devour the light. "Find the truth," she wheezed, voice rasping like sandpaper, each word tumbling from her lips like the final shreds of hope. "They will come for you if you linger. You must remember before it is too late." Before I could question her, a shattering resonance echoed through the den, splintering the air. I turned, and the wall behind me cracked open like a gaping maw, revealing the obsidian abyss I had almost fallen into moments before. From the darkness, black tendrils of shadow slithered forth, reaching hungrily toward me with a ghastly intent. "Run!" Her voice pierced the chaos, shaking me from my stupor. Desperate, propelled by her frantic plea in the clutches of the encroaching darkness racing all around, I turned and sprinted into the corridor, a heart-stopping panic fueling my flight. But the shadows were relentless, chasing me with ethereal screams that resonated through my very soul. I heard the haunting laughter and felt the sweat-soaked despair as the whispers morphed into an unholy symphony of my name, urging me to turn back. "Time is up. Time is up," they echoed. I dashed down the corridor, long aware that reaching the door might be futile, but if I faltered now, would I become another soul woven into the fabric of this haunted tapestry? Just before I hurled myself into the unknown, a vicious snare of icy fingers caught my wrist, a vice grip that seized hold of my fate. I screamed, fighting desperately against the fading light, grappling for my freedom as shadows eclipsed my vision, and then, the blackness swallowed me whole. I gasped for breath as the void enveloped me, the icy grip around my wrist loosening its hold only momentarily before dragging me deeper into the abyss. Darkness clawed at my sanity, suffocated by an overwhelming sense of despair. My body felt weightless, suspended between nightmares, until a tumultuous force hurled me back, not into light but into an equally twisted reality. I landed on uneven stone, warmth flooding through me as though I had been physically torn from one realm and thrown into another. The pungent smell of burning incense invaded my senses, thick with nothingness yet laced with something unexpected, a hint of sweetness that turned sour on my tongue. As I blinked my eyes open, I found myself in a different part of the opium den, a chamber dripping with cinematic horror. Walls pulsated, adorned with tattered tapestries depicting grotesque celebrations of pleasure intertwined with scenes of agony and despair, as if celebrating a vile union of ecstasy and death. Glancing up, I noticed symbols etched into the ceiling, their meanings lost to time but seeping malevolence that turned my stomach in knots. The air grew heavier, thick with murmurs and distant cries, wrapping around me like a shroud. I tried to gather my thoughts but felt them scattering like autumn leaves caught in a tempest. Clutching my head, I staggered to my feet and turned, hoping to retrace my steps, but the passage I had come through was no longer visible. My heart raced. There was no escape from this warped maze. As I ventured deeper into the chamber, flickering lanterns overhead cast serpentine shadows that danced alongside me, twisting into monstrous forms. I stumbled upon a cluster of opium pipes, each intricately crafted, remnants of lost souls wrapped in silk and despair. The moment I touched one, a torrent of memories crashed into me, overpowering and vivid. Voices hummed in sync, both intoxicating and tortured. They called out their last wishes, lamentations and confessions bleeding through the veil. I want to forget they took my children, I did it for love. The cacophony swirled around the air, palpable, thickening like fog, dragging me deeper into a haunting interrogation reserved for the damned. A low, sinister growl pierced through the noise, sending a tremor up my spine. I turned toward the source. Crouched near the far wall was a shadowed figure enveloped in a cloak of woe, gnawing on an opium pipe. I could see its eyes, glowing amber like the dying embers of a fire, regal yet twisted in their sorrow. "Why do you intrude?" it rasped, voice curling around me like smoke. "Many have come, but none have escaped." I struggled to speak, fear coiling tight around my throat, stalling the flow of words. I seek her," I managed to stammer out. The woman with the locket, with a low hiss that sounded like laughter laced with venom, the figure dragged its gaze to the floor, revealing the scattered remnants of decayed bodies, lost in twisted positions of horror. "She is here, but she is not whole. And you must pay for your trespassing," it uttered, rising with a fluidity that defied reality, stepping toward me as if the air itself parted. Suddenly, the whispers surged louder, a cacophony of despair unspooling before me. "She condemned you," they wailed, "to find the truth, only to lose your soul." The shadows thickened, slick and oily, transforming into wailing faces, contorting in anguish. They begged for release, their cries resonating in harmony as they merged, an amalgamation of regrets and lost lives. Panicking, my vision darted around the chamber, and I caught glimpses of shadowy figures emerging from the walls, from the floor, the very essence of sorrow and despair rising in a throng. My heart raced as I turned back to the cloaked figure, desperate for answers. "What must I do?" I screamed above the storm of anguish surrounding us. "Embrace the shadows," it hissed, revealing teeth glinting like shattered glass. "Only then will you find her." But what did that mean? Was it a choice or a curse? I felt my resolve waver, a whirlwind of indecision spiraling within. When suddenly the ground trembled violently beneath my feet. I lost my balance as the cries crescendoed, twisting into a furious howl. The chamber began to crack and splinter, fractures racing ominously across the walls. The shadows surged forth, coiling by my legs like serpents, drawing me into their grip. My instincts clawed for survival, but the tendrils of darkness ensnared me like a funeral shroud. "You will not leave!" the figure screeched, the distorted voices merging into one horrifying roar as the world around me shattered into nothingness. I felt the shadows pulling me down, a mesmerizing descent into hellish oblivion, when I grasped blindly, my fingers wrapping around something solid, a heart-shaped locket, pulsing with warmth. In that heartbeat of clarity, before the world collapsed around me, the locket's cold surface hummed with unearthly force, casting the black tendrils back, illuminating a path of crimson light. As the echoes of despair faded, the sensation of the woman's presence flashed in my mind, her tormented visage bursting forth like a chaotic vision, a single gaze that bore the weight of an indescribable truth. "What have you done?" I muttered, feeling the ground beneath me shift one last time. Then everything dissolved, leaving me suspended in darkness, a cold whisper curling around my thoughts. "Are you prepared to confront the depths of your own soul?" And with those words rattling mercilessly within me, I could see nothing at all, but I felt a chilling certainty. I was not alone. The chill prickled at the back of my neck, a shiver that gnawed into my bones, as I became aware of the silence that enveloped me now. Gone were the whispers and the anguished cries. They had been replaced with a suffocating stillness, thick as fog yet somehow vibrant with an impending dread. I realized that the darkness had morphed around me, swirling and folding into patterns more sinister than mere absence of light. I gripped the locket tightly, my fingers curling around its unnaturally warm surface, grounding me in the disorienting void. As I focused on it, memories faint and muffled flashed across my mind. Fragments of laughter echoed in the corners of my subconscious, faces of the lost intertwined with the macabre theatrics of the opium den, flickering like an old film reel before disintegrating into black. With my heart thrumming in my chest, I took a tentative step forward, uncertainty pressing against me like a weight. The air crackled, pregnant with energy that suggested movement in the shadows that wove around me. I felt eyes upon me, watching from the depths of the darkness, but with each passing moment, utter calm enveloped me. It was as if the shadows themselves whispered promises of long-forgotten secrets. Then, a distant light winked into existence, illuminating a narrow path ahead, lined with remnants of shattered dreams. I approached, drawn to its undeniable allure, but the shadows behind me stirred, murmuring in a language I couldn't comprehend. They seemed to shift with unease, as if fearing the light, and I hesitated, caught in a conflict between two realms, the whispers of despair behind me and the beckoning glow ahead. As I pressed on, the vivid light grew stronger, casting long shadows that danced on the walls. With each step taken, I became aware of silhouettes forming around me, gentle figures wrapped in shrouds of despair, their features blurring like reflections on a disturbed lake. They were pleading with me, yet their mouths displayed only silence. I glanced back, realizing the figures weren't just shadows but echoes of the souls that had lingered, entrapped within the confines of this cursed place. "What do you seek?" Their collective gaze bore into me, and as I turned back towards the light, I whispered, "The woman, the one with the locket." The light pulsed, and with it, the shadows writhed in agony, consuming what little ambience remained. The atmosphere thickened as I felt something tethering me to this space, a sense of urgency, of longing. In that instant, the light burst forth with a flood of images, each illuminating piece revealing haunting glimpses of the opium den I had wandered through. There, amongst the chaotic throngs, I caught sight of a striking silhouette, her long dark hair cascading like ink, a figure wrought with ethereal grace yet shadowed by a sorrow too profound to grasp. It was her! The woman I had sought, trapped within the labyrinth of memory and desperation. She extended a hand toward me, her face twisted with a mixture of love and fear. "Come to me," she called, her voice no longer a whisper but a desperate plea that made my heart sputter violently in my chest. "You must understand before it's too late. They don't want you to leave with me." Just as I teetered on the brink of stepping into that light, as if crossing into a sanctuary amidst the chaos, the ground cracked beneath my feet again, ripping open like a mouth yawning wide, revealing a chasm darker than the void I had encountered before. The shadows surged around me, a mass of howling spirits drawn to this moment, their faces contorted in rage and despair. No! I shouted, fighting against the pull of the shadows that sought to drag me down, my hands clutching the locket instinctively. "Let me go!" But it was as if the darkness fed off my anguish, intensifying, swallowing the bridge I was so desperate to cross, and then, to my horror, I felt a cold hand grip my ankle, dragging me toward the abyss. The shadow clawed at my body, an insidious force that inflicted agony coursing through my veins, making my very thoughts churn with panic. I looked back, but the woman's gaze had shifted, her expression clinging to a haunting realization it was I who was now to be claimed. Embraced the shadows, the echo of the figure from before mouthed, mocking my fight as the darkness bent and twisted around me, a serpent constricting its prey. Just as the weight of inevitability bore down upon me, I felt the locket flash between my fingers, a pulse of something raw and powerful and terrible. In that fleeting moment, the entire world changed. The shadows recoiled, creating a surge of light that momentarily drowned the cries around me. I saw her then, clearer than before, her sorrow transformed into resolve. "You must choose," she cried out, her voice now piercing the thick wall of destitution wrapping me in its embrace. "Do you want to remain in this darkness or risk all to free us both?" The chasm yawned open wider, the shadows threatening to swallow me whole as I felt the locket grow heavier, pulsing with desperation. And with that metaphorical knife's edge splitting my resolve, I understood. My next move would dictate not only my fate but hers, and the darkness waited, ready to claim its next victim or perhaps set one free. As I opened my mouth to reply, the figures behind me erupted into a desperate cacophony of screams, filling the air with dread and urgency. "Make your choice," they cried, and in that chaos, I felt the locket begin to slip from my grasp. The locket plummeted from my fingers, spiraling into the darkness with an unnatural speed. My heart raced, beating against my ribs like a caged bird desperate for freedom. I lunged after it, grasping helplessly at the shadows that twisted and churned around me like a maelstrom. The shrieks of the tormented souls spiraled louder, a chorus of despair igniting an instinctual fear deep within me. "No!" I screamed, desperation cloaking my voice. Time was a cruel trickster here, each moment stretched endlessly like tendrils of smoke hovering in the air. I could barely register the woman's contorted face morphing into a mask of agony as I felt myself pulled further into the suffocating abyss. It was then that the whispers from the depths began to coalesce into a haunting melody, a song sung by the damned, a sound meant to lull me into surrender. As the locket disappeared from view, a sudden realization washed over me. His was no ordinary piece of jewelry. It was a binding contract, a key to their sorrow. It represented both the freedom they desperately sought and the chains that held them captive. My own burdens loomed behind me, and I could sense that each choice I made chipped away at my humanity, opening a door to my own madness. The light began to flicker, pulsing in rhythm with my racing heartbeat. Shadows elongated and trailed behind them, feeding off the dread gnawing at my core. I looked back once more at the woman. Her eyes screamed for clarity, desperate for my understanding. "The locket holds their souls," she cried, choking on her words. "You must return it. Let them go." In my mind, the specter of her grief clouded my vision, intertwining with my thoughts as I sought a way out. The figures around me pressed closer, their ethereal forms brushing against my skin, their coldness sharp like shards of glass. Was I merely their next vessel? Did my very presence spark hope or despair? Gritting my teeth, I fought against the encroaching darkness, realizing that whatever entity reigned here was feeding off my fear. I closed my eyes, desperately seeking strength. If the locket was the key, then I needed to unlock its potential rather than succumb to it. "Let them go!" I roared, the power of my own voice surprising me in the face of all-consuming dread. I refused to be another prisoner of this madness. Suddenly, the shadows recoiled as if struck by an unseen force, their grip loosening momentarily. I could hear their anguished wails morphing into terrified gasps. The faint light morphed into something tangible, fiery and fierce, coiling around my hand like a serpent as I reached toward the void. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of me locket. It lay glimmering upon the chasm's edge, its warm light pulsating like a heartbeat, inviting me to reclaim it. I surged forward with newfound determination, darting towards it as the shadows slashed at my heels. The darkness shrieked, the sound a discordant symphony of fury. "Come back!" The voices begged in unison, chilling me to the bone. Just as I stretched out my hand, grasping the locket's warm surface, a fierce gust of shadowy winds whirled around me, pulling at my very essence. I felt an icy breath against my neck, the chilling sensation unmistakably alive, wrapping me in a tentative embrace that froze my heart with terror. "Foolish child!" hissed a disembodied voice, echoing from the very abyss I had fought so vehemently against. "Do you think you can simply take what is ours? You will join us, whether you will it or not. In horror, I felt the ground beneath me shift, crumbling away, cascading into the chasm that opened wider, roaring like a timeless beast. The figures closed in, their faces morphing into anguished masks of grief and raggy a gallery of lost souls ready to reclaim what they believed was rightfully theirs. As I clutched the locket tightly, I saw the woman's figure flicker and fray, the tether between us threatening to snap. "Trust! You must trust your heart!" she implored, her voice suddenly drowned out by the clamor surrounding me. I had done it, I had grasped the locket, but the repercussions of that act unleashed a force far beyond my comprehension. The shadows convulsed, the air around me warping with their wails, until I felt the very fabric of reality begin to tear itself apart. In that chaos, the woman reached out again, desperation tangled with ethereal beauty. "Open the locket, and you will see!" she shouted. The world pitched and churned. With a rapid twist, I turned the locket over in my hands. As I did, I was struck by a blinding flash of light that could only be described as the essence of pure agony, a reflection of betrayal and despair, a glimpse into the souls held within. What emerged next was a darkness so profound it felt tangible. The shadows ceased their grip in an instant, leaving only the woman tethering me with her gaze. But her expression shifted from desperation to horror, as if she had foreseen a fate worse than the abyss. As I stood there, the specters before me began to fragment, dissolving into the air like shards of glass, their anguished cries mingling with the howling of the shadows. And then the ground beneath me shuddered once more, revealing the deeper, unending void that lay beneath a layer of darkness more terrifying than I had ever known. "Choose wisely," came a chilling whisper as everything began to unravel. "This is but the beginning of our story." And with that, the darkness surged, swallowing me whole. As I gasped for breath, accompanied only by the disembodied echoes of the damned. The locket, trapped between salvation and damnation, throbbed in my palm, urging me to unlock its true horror. I stood at the edge of the abyss, heart racing, eyes darting between the shadows and the locket clutched in my hand. The shimmer of the locket had changed, reflecting more than just light. It sparkled with fragments of the tortured souls trapped within, their silent screams reverberating in my mind like a banshee's wail. Suddenly, the fragrance of opium, cloying and suffocating, wafted toward me, dragging my senses down into a malevolence I was unprepared for. The shadows flickered, pulsating with a life of their own as if feeding on the fear that radiated from me. I could sense an ancient presence stirring, lurking behind the veil of despair, something that had bided its time, waiting for a soul like mine to wander too close. It was then that the faces of the lost began to materialize, rising from the depths of the chasm like specters summoned from the dark folklore of opium dens. Hollow eyes and gaunt expressions merged with the smoke from the past, each visage more twisted than the last, mired in their eternal regret. One figure, clad in tattered silk, reached out toward me, fingers elongated and trembling as though resisting the pull of the dark, visceral depths. "Help us," it croaked in a whisper that caressed the very edge of my sanity. We sought solace in oblivion, but all we found was despair. Their voices formed a cacophony, merging into one sorrowful plea that reverberated through the air. The shadows thickened around me, swirling faster, hungry for my panic. I stepped back, teetering on the precipice of the crumbling ground. The edges of my perception where fear and madness intertwined were becoming blurred, each anguished wail inching me closer to losing my grip on reality. I glanced at the locket again, the once comforting warmth now an unsettling reminder of the horrors it harbored. It began to pulse in rhythm with my heartbeat, each thud resonating in my skull like a solemn drum announcing my imminent demise. "What do you want from me?" I shouted into the void, the desperation tinging my voice raw. "Join us," the figures moaned, the chant entwined with their cries like a haunting lullaby meant to lull me into surrender. "Become one with the shadows. Embrace the eternal night." Now veils of smoke began to rise around me, forming wisps of forgotten narratives engulfed in a haze of crushed dreams. Stories of cursed opium addicts, lost in Shanghai's darkest corners, resonated within me, threading through my thoughts with raw, electric urgency. Each tale was a tether binding me to their anguished existence, a promise of solace that screamed out from the void. Caught within their sorrow, I felt my own memories bleed into theirs, mixing with tales of heartache and addiction, lives lost not just to substances but to a yearning for something beyond understanding, a desperation that had once flickered in my own heart. Confronted with my past, a fresh wave of terror washed over me. What if this was not just their fate but mine as well? The shadows writhed, changing, morphing, whispering my name among their despair. "They took the locket from you, just as they took everything from us," a voice dripped with venom against my ear. The ground trembled violently beneath me, fissures widening and deepening, revealing the gnashing teeth of torment that awaited in the darkness below. Just then, amidst the swirling chaos, I remembered the woman's parting words. "Open the locket, and you will see." The urgency propelled me, compelling me to act even as the chasm threatened to swallow me whole. With a deep breath, I flicked the latch of the locket, daring to plunge into the unknown of what was inside, hoping to uncover a truth that could shatter the web binding me to this haunted fate. The lid opened slowly, revealing a swirling vortex of light and shadow, the two at war, struggling as if bound in constant combat. From its depths rose a vision, a fleeting glimpse of a Shanghai alley, steeped in opulence just as much as it was coated in the grime of suffering. Figures danced in and out of focus, caught in a grotesque celebration, oblivious to the decay around them. They laughed like phantoms, their cries devoid of true joy, each face a mask of desperation layered upon illusion. I felt myself pulled into the memory, swirling along with the remnants of hastily whispered promises and clinking opium pipes, the heady scent choking the air. "They're gone, they're all gone!" The voice rang out, a new emergence from the void, me voice, torn with grief. "What have they done?" Then darkness erupted, the shadows shrieked in discordant fury, swirling violently as if roused by my frantic thoughts. The laughter transformed into mocking jeers, a chorus of torment rising up against me. You can't escape us. You are one of us now. A sudden silence enveloped me, cocooning me in a chilling embrace. For a fractious second, I swore I felt the ghostly fingers of the lost gently brush against my skin, beckoning me with promises of release and unending oblivion. Join us, they murmured again, and suddenly I realized this was a choice, a reckoning. And as the tension built like a storm, I felt something shift within the ground at my feet, a low rumble that nudged closer to an awakening terror. The crooked laughter roared to life, echoing around me, accompanied by a surge so potent I felt every ounce of my strength drain away, and then I saw a figure emerging from the depths of the shadows, forged from despair and wrath, its eyes blazing with hatred. It stretched out its long, bony arm as if reaching for my heart. Welcome, it breathed, its voice a slithering caress. You've finally come home. I stood frozen, heart pounding, realizing that the choice I thought I made was only an illusion. The abyss had claimed me, and with a single, frantic heartbeat, it pushed me further into the darkness, dragging the locket down with me, the horror only just beginning. The darkness tightened its grip, a suffocating cloak that obscured all hope of escape. Each pulse of despair emanated from the figure, a manifestation of the accumulated agony of the lost souls it represented. Its skeletal fingers stretched toward me, nails like shards of glass glinting in the abyssal twilight. The air crackled with an unholy energy, and I could hear the shrieks of the damned swirling around us, trapped in an eternal dance of sorrow. Do you know how long we've waited? It croaked, voice layered with malice and longing. We were once like you, full of life and dreams. But desperation invites the darkness, and we welcomed it. Now you will too. I stumbled back, the ground shifting beneath me, threatening to plunge me into the howling void. No! I don't want this! I cried, my voice swallowed by the raucous laughter of the otherworldly revelers. Acceptance is the first step, it hissed, twisting its elongated body, the shadows slinking around it like serpents. Feel the weight of your choices, your sins, and let them bind you. Join our reverie or face the truth of your own demise. As it spoke, I felt a horrific pull in my chest, tendrils of despair latching onto my heart, dragging me ever closer to the foreboding entity. Memories surged forward, flashes of my own desperation rising, unbidden nights I spent seeking comfort in substances, the friends I'd lost to the same temptation, their laughter now mingling with the mocking chorus. I in my frantic mind, the faces of the lost twisted into something real. They hovered on the edge of my vision, begging for acknowledgement. Visions of their lives flickered, opium-stained corridors, mournful eyes glazed with longing, and the fleeting joy that had turned into endless regret. They reached out, mouths moving in silent pleas, begging not to be forgotten but embraced in their torment. Then, out of the primal chaos, whispers began to coalesce. Sinister revelations echoed in my mind, bathing me in icy dread. It will be so easy, they promised, their voices a soothing balm laced with venom. The euphoria of oblivion awaits. Just stepped into our world suddenly, a force unleashed within me, a surge of adrenaline fueled by a fight against the shackles binding my soul. I remembered the locket in my trembling hand. Clutching it tightly, I wrenched my gaze from the sinister figure, desperate to recall the light that flickered within its depths. With blurred vision, I pressed the locket against my chest, the cold metal throbbing as if alive, resonating with the tumultuous energy of this cursed realm. The visions flared brighter for an instant, illuminating the darkness around me. I saw another flicker, a glimpse of hope buried under despair, a flickering image of a way out. But before I could focus on it, shadows erupted from the chasm, writhing and howling like banshees. The figure let out a resounding laugh, a chilling sound, vibrating through my bones. You cannot simply escape. The opium breeds a bond deeper than blood. You are and always will be ours. Fear wrapped itself around my throat, squeezing tighter as I was engulfed by ghostly visages, their gaunt hands reaching for me, pulling me closer to their eternal lament. My vision blurred, the faces morphing into grotesque scenes of nightmares and whispered regrets, telling tales I had hoped to forget but could not outrun. A deep, guttural noise rose from the heart of the abyss, accompanying the rising chaos. The ground trembled again, and more figures emerged, their forms grotesque echoes of lives consumed by addiction. They mocked my struggle, their laughter melding with the unsettling chant of, "Join us, become one." In an unexpected surge of clarity, I screamed, "I won't! I won't be like you!" as I fought against the tidal wave of despair threatening to drown me. The figure before me recoiled momentarily, its eyes narrowing with rage and resentment. "You are a fool!" it screeched, raising its arm high, dark energy swirling violently, culminating in a nefarious sphere of pure dread. "This realm is your fate, a twisted lullaby of the damned, and you will be undone by your own awakening." I felt it build around me an unfathomable power, dark and primordial, ready to overwhelm me completely. The space around us flickered as if it were a mirage, the boundaries of reality fraying and unspooling like thread unraveling from a child's toy. Then, in a flash of painful clarity, I remembered the final words of my friend, whispered before their last breath: "You must confront what's inside first. Light the flame, and do not just open the locket, seek the truth hidden beyond it." Roaring flames erupted within the locket, consuming the darkness with a fire that cast shadows even more sinister than before. I fumbled with it, desperate to see past the terror, longing to glimpse that which lay hidden within the heart of the chaos. Just as I was about to find the answer, the darkness surged, powerful and overwhelming, pushing against my resolve. My breath caught in my throat, and the shadows hissed, their anguished voices merging into a single cacophonous roar. "You think you can defy this fate? We are many! You are nothing!" And then, in a heartbeat that stretched like eternity, the world around me began to twist and fold, warping. The laughter turned to screams, echoing with horror that clawed at the very fabric of my sanity. Finally, as the flames flickered toward the peak, the figure lunged, its wretched fingers sharp as daggers, icy cold, aiming for my heart. Just before contact, the locket blazed with a blinding light, and I screamed "No!" with every ounce of defiance left in me. But the abyss had its own plans. The darkness roared back, and the figure vanished, leaving behind an empty void filled with echoes of terror, and a single word resonating hauntingly: "Remember." I felt a dull throb in my chest as the echoes of that single word echoed off the walls of my mind, reverberating against the growing sense of dread. "Remember." The atmosphere shifted, thickening like fog rolling in from the sea, suffocating and murky. I stood alone amidst the emptiness, my pulse quickening, the darkness teasing at the edges of my vision, eager to reclaim its prey. Instinct kicked in, and I stumbled backward, my feet shuffling against the cold, desolate ground. Shadows stretched and crept toward me, fingers of dark mist haunting my peripheral vision. As I turned to flee, I realized I was not alone. Tendrils of shadow twisted and converged, coiling into grotesque shapes that hungered for life. "Remember," they whispered, voices laced with the despair and longing of the lost. These were not mere afterimages. They were haunted fragments, a reflection of those who had once walked these streets, enraptured and consumed by the dread allure of opium. I became aware of their presence, not as vague specters, but as a congregation of tormented souls drawn into the folds of this nightmarish space. A flickering scoop of light danced at the edges of their tortured forms, revealing ghastly visages, eyes wide with pain yet somehow aware, imploring me with their silent screams. They bore witness to something greater, an all-consuming addiction, their lives snuffed out like candles in a storm. My heart raced as they closed in, surrounding me with their sorrowful chorus, the air thick with regret and despair. I pressed the locket close to my chest, the warmth radiating from it a fragile barrier against the overwhelming despair pressing down on me. "What do you want?" I demanded, my voice shaky but defiant. "Leave me alone." Their response was a chilling cacophony of voices, rising in pitch, layering over each other in a haunting melody of mourning. "You are one of us now. Your choices bind you to this place. You cannot escape what you've invoked. No!" I screamed, retreating further, heart pounding like thunder in my ears. "They're wrong. I'm not like you. I won't live in this nightmare." But they drew closer, their faces shifting into familiar forms, friends I had lost, smiles twisted in agony, eyes pleading for salvation I could not give. I stumbled and fell, overwhelmed by their haunting presence. A cold grip clutched my heart, the weight of their despair sinking deep into my chest. "Remember what you sought to forget," a voice slithered through the air, dripping with menace that echoed from the shadows. The bond you broke, the life you abandoned, it clicked then, the fragments of memories flooding in a kaleidoscope of scenes blending into a harrowing narrative that I had tried to bury under layers of denial. I saw a faded photograph of us together, laughter bright and alive, before the darkness had seeped in. Clarity sliced through the fog, the abandon of loved ones, the hollow ache that came from the opioid haze. How desperately I had struggled to stay afloat before losing everything that I never wanted it. I never wanted to forget. I cried, desperate veins of anguish coursing through me, weaving through the guilt and grief like a treacherous vine. In my attachments to their shadows, I sensed a sorrow rooted deep, intertwining with my own pain. Please, I want to help you. I want to save you. The shadows shifted uneasily, coiling tighter around me like a serpent preparing to strike. Help us? They echoed mockingly, a bitter shriek of laughter rising. You only serve to remind us how futile our existence has become. To remember is to live in torment. You have called us forth with your longing for salvation. Panic surged within me as I grasped the locket tighter. No! I can break this curse. Together, we can rise. My voice wavered, the last remnants of hope flickering like a moth drawn to a flame. In an instant, the shadows froze, a stillness enveloping the oppressive air. I inhaled sharply, piercing through the uncertainty to grasp at my last shred of tenacity. Help me grasp the light that binds us. Let it guide you from this existence. For a moment, the tormented faces shifted, doubt flickering in their hollow eyes before the darkness spilled forth anew, howling with rage and despair. You are a fool to seek light in this abyss. The truth shall shred your very soul. You cannot save us. A figure surged from the depths of the abyss, its eyes burning like coals, its skeletal form merging with the writhing shadows. Remember, 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 it hissed, each word like a dagger, shoving thoughts into my mind of choices long made that had led me here. A surge of dread engulfed me. The shadows began to spiral, reaching, mourning my inevitability. You forged this bond, and now you must pay the price. The truth lies beyond, and soon you shall forsake all and embrace the chaos. Desperation clawed at my throat, and within the maelstrom of dread and shadows, the locket tightened in my grip, emanating warmth amidst the despair. At that moment I understood, it was never merely about me. As I faced the twisting void, realization dawned, and I prepared to discover the truth in the depths. Screams erupted, drowning the cacophony, and the shadows surged closer, wild and hungry, demanding my surrender. The portal of chaos opened further, and a forceful tug at my limbs felt like a sick whirlpool pulling me into its center, and in the eye of the storm, I felt their voices reverberate within me, intertwining. Remember or be remembered. The darkness surged in one last, terrible thrust, and in that instant I saw the locket glow brighter than ever before, illuminating everything for a fleeting second. Just as the shadows closed in, I dared to look beyond the light, and in that moment, the ground beneath my feet shattered like glass, plunging me into an abyss filled with sorrowful laughter and countless memories waiting to be unearthed. The world twisted, and I realized that the truth was waiting there, desolate but potent, ready to engulf me in ways I had never imagined. I gasped as the darkness pulled me into the suffocating void, the sound of breaking glass echoing in my ears. The locket slipped from my grasp, spiraling downward, catching rays of light that flickered like dying stars. I felt weightless, suspended between the shards of reality and the shadows of memory, a paradoxical existence woven from the fabric of despair and haunted dreams. In the depths below, I glimpsed spectral figures swirling, veils of sorrow cascading around them like shrouds, faces contorted in anguish. Their wails pierced the silence, intermingling with the cacophony of forgotten souls and the echoes of laughter that had long turned to screams. Remember us, they wept, their collective voice a haunting melody that clawed at my sanity. Remember what you seek to bury. I reached desperately for the locket, a potent symbol of the truth hidden within its confines. The faces around me morphed, flickering as if caught in a dying film reel. The warmth of the locket, now a distant memory, implored me to understand the revelations that awaited. What was the cost of this journey? What would I have to confront to reclaim my spirit from the abyss? As I fell deeper, I mourned the light that faded from my grasp, realizing I had invoked the wrath of something primordial, the essence of lost dreams seeking restitution. The bond formed not just with the souls I had met, but with my own past weighed heavily upon me, shackling me to the dread of self-discovery. A jolt surged through my body as I plummeted, landing with a heavy thud on cold, uneven ground. I stood amidst the remnants of a shattered past, the silence pressing upon me like an anvil atop my chest. Around me, time itself seemed to linger, each moment stretching endlessly into the realm of the forgotten, an opium den laden with desolation, marred by grotesque murals depicting cult-like revelries of indulgence and chaos. Squinting against the oppressive gloom, I noticed the walls pulse with a sinister life, shadows coiling like snakes around brick and mortar, drawing closer as I moved. The air grew thick with the intoxicating scent of opium, sweet yet sickening, threatening to plunge me back into the numbness I had fought so hard to escape. Suddenly, from the depths of the shadows, I felt a hand gripping my wrist, a ghostly caress laced with a profound chill that sent shivers coursing through my spine. "Find her," a voice rasped, sounding like countless souls merging into one. "She is the key." Panic gripped me anew. Was it the woman from the locket? The specter who had beckoned me into this hell? With a determined grip on my psyche, I concentrated on the warmth that still lingered from the locket, the echo of her plea intertwining with my thoughts. Help us, remember." Eager to leave this nightmarish place, I closed my eyes, fighting back the tides of despair that sought to bind me. "Show me the truth," I shouted into the darkness, pushing against the wave of anxiety that crashed upon my resolve. The shadows erupted into a tempest, swirling violently around me. In its eye, I glimpsed fleeting images, relived moments of pain, loss, fleeting joy, and regret wrapped in a tapestry that found its purpose in the lives intertwined with mine. A whisper echoed through the storm, "You know why you're here," and suddenly it clicked. My throat tightened, and I staggered back as memories seeped into my consciousness like ink in water. I was not just a historian, I was a participant, an addict entangled in the very web of destruction that I sought to unravel. The stories of the cursed opium addicts were echoes of my own life, faces from my past, shadows of those I had lost to the very vice I thought I could master. And oh, I gasped, the horror crashing in. I had missed the warning signs, brushed aside the damage I had wrought in the wake of my own addiction. My heart raced as the realization struck like a thunderclap. The locket was not merely a key, but a reminder of my own entrapment. In that instant of clarity, the shadows receded slightly, writhing in agitation. The specters swirled closer, their faces distorted by anguish, the chorus of cries, "Join us! Embrace the darkness!" I shook my head in defiance. "I will break this cycle!" I shouted, but inside uncertainty gnawed at me. The nightmarish figures pressed closer, and the sweet aroma of opium grew stronger. My old companion whispering insidious promises of relief, numbing my guilt, dulling my pain. "You belong with us," a familiar voice encased in darkness called out, tauntingly intoxicated. No! I screamed, stepping back as the walls seemed to pulse, heartbeats echoing 1,000 regrets. I refuse to be lost again." The shadows shimmered, coiling like an angry serpent as I felt the power of the locket surge back to life. With renewed fervor, I ripped it open, focusing on the ethereal glow pouring forth, illuminating the darkness. I could see it, the figure emerging, so achingly beautiful yet marred by the weights of sorrow. "Remember!" she cried, her voice the only anchor in this tempest. "Accept your past to free us all." The locket flared brightly, shocking the shadows, banishing them momentarily. I grasped the truth, the threads binding me to these lost souls were my own demons, and to free them was to confront my own darkness. With every ounce of courage, I closed my eyes again, exhaling sharply, and beckoned the shadows. "Come forth! I embrace you!" I proclaimed. "Let me remember, and in so doing, release your torment." The shadows hissed, recoiling yet drawn in by my plea. A blinding light engulfed me, and I felt the efficacy of untold tales surge through, memories merging into one cacophony of voices intertwined with my own as if our fates had always been tied. With sheer determination, I embraced the swirling shadows, surrendering to the ancestral tales of despair, shame, and unyielding hope. Then, in a vibrantly blinding rush, the truth erupted forth, and I found myself in that moment of realization not just an observer, but as someone who had succumbed to evil's siren call, the cycle part of me. I had wandered too close, and only now did I understand the cost. I stood on the brink, illuminated by the echoes of 1,000 lives, and I looked beyond the swirling blackness. There, in the center of the turbulence, was a face so familiar, filled with grief and longing. It was the woman, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Release us and be released," she said. In that moment, the darkness began to writhe, collapsing upon itself as the energies surged, whirling away the shadows, taunting the air until only her voice remained. "You are part of us, but do not become lost." With that clarity, I felt the room shift, transform, as I let go of the locket, the distant echoes dispersing. And as I did, I heard the truth merge effortlessly into one echoing note. A final chilling realization rippled through the air. The locket shattered, hurdles of light exploded, obliterating the shadows, scattering the past as my own voice intertwined with the flickering clarity. "Remember," they whispered in final, lingering breaths. But suddenly, a different kind of memory would echo. "But will you ever truly forget?" With those words carving through the stillness, I took one last steady breath, the weight of sorrow lifting like smoke into the night sky, knowing the darkness would always exist, lurking, waiting for the unwary. And as the last remnants of the tangled, haunting shadows faded, I too felt a chilling transformation stir a new bond, a lingering reminder that now, this darkness was also inside me. I smiled, a haunting freedom washing over me, a beauty interwoven with the fear that would follow. Because as the light enveloped, the final thought echoed in my mind, a barrage of whispers intertwined with the lingering shadows, sweet yet suffocating: "You are not free, not yet."